love, come by here. Come by here. Somebody needs you, Lord. Come right here. Oh, Lord. Come by here. All right, good evening again, guys. Welcome to lesson 2, Introduction to Music Theory. I am Andrew Dixon again. All right, so we're doing a follow-up on the earlier lesson that we did. In that lesson, we spoke about the keys on the piano / keyboard. It would be the same thing if you play an organ as well. And we looked at different types of notes. Just to recap, we looked at the whole note, and we said that the whole note is a note that gets 4 counts. Right. We also said, sorry, that would not be the whole note. This would be the whole note. No, that's still not the whole note. This would be the whole note. So we said the whole note gets 4 counts. We also looked at the half note. This would be the half note, and we said that the half note gets 2 counts. We looked at the quarter note, and we said that the quarter note gets 1 count. We looked at the 8th note, and we said that the 8th note gets how many counts? Half of a count. We also looked at the 16th note, and we said the 16th note gets a quarter of a count, right? So if you need more detail on that, feel free to revisit lesson number 1. All right, so we're looking at lesson number 2, and what we're going to talk about in this lesson is the lines and spaces of the treble clef and the lines and spaces of the bass clef. Let's start with the bass clef first. So if you look on your screen, you are seeing again these musical symbols that you might have been accustomed to seeing, but you may never have stopped to think, what do they mean? Or you may have gotten some knowledge about it in the past, and it's long gone out of your memory. So let's give you a refresher. So we're going to start at the bottom. First of all, both the treble clef, which is at the top, it looks like that fancy S, and the bass clef, which is below, that looks like a backward C, when they are combined and held together by this curly brace, together they form what is called the grand staff. So the grand staff is a combination of the bass clef and the treble clef being bound together by the brace, that curly bracket. So as a piano player, as a keyboard player, as an organ player, you would be reading the notes that are on the treble clef as well as the notes that are on the bass clef simultaneously at the same time. So you have to be looking at both clefs as you go across. Whichever notes are on the treble clef, which is above, would be usually played by your right hand, and whichever notes are on the bass clef, which is below, would normally be played by your left hand. And so you have to be thinking, as they would say, with both sides of your brain. You have to be thinking about what the right hand is doing and also what the left hand is doing, and what both hands are doing together would form the completeness of your music on your particular instrument. So it requires a lot of concentration. You have to be thinking on your feet, as they would say. So Let us first look at the bass clef. I want to start with the bass clef first. Some persons start with the treble clef because it's perhaps seemingly easier. Let's go for the more challenging one. Let's start with the bass clef, the left hand. Each line on the treble clef has a different letter assigned to it, a different letter name. And I'm putting a note on each line. Now, to make this easier, what I'm going to do is use whole notes. Remember, whole notes do not have any stem on the side, just that round egg shape all by itself. So, any note that's on the first line is G. We're going to write in capital letter G. All right, so on the bass clef, and we're going to count the lines from bottom to top. We're going to start with the foundation first, right? Like we're building a house. We don't build the roof first and then build on the way down. First, we establish the foundation and then build up. Okay, so the first line from the bottom is G. The second line is B. And as we add the note, let's write the letter. So whenever you see a note, whether it's a whole note, whether it's a half note, whether it's a quarter note, it doesn't matter. You're looking for where the round part of the note sits. If it sits on the first line, then it's a G. If it sits on the second line, then it's a B. And you can look at the key above to see where you would actually find this on the piano. Now, what if the note is sitting on the third line? If the note is sitting on the third line, then we say that that note is D. Okay? D as in donkey. What if the note is sitting on the fourth line? What do we call that note? We would say that note is F. And finally, if it's sitting on the fifth line, then that note is A. So just to recap, we have G, B, D, F, as in favor, and A. And there is an acronym that they taught me when I was just learning piano. And it says, good boys deserve food always. All right. So that's it for the notes, the lines of the bass clef. Of course, at this point, if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask your questions in the comments. All right, now what I'm looking for is a bar line. I'm going to add a double bar line right here. Okay. Now, this just signals the end of one idea. No, like if you're writing in English, you would use a full stop when you've come to the end of a sentence. That's kind of like what the double bar is for. It signals the end of a section or the end of the music. Okay, so we've completed naming the lines of the bass clef. So we add our double bar. Now on the next side of the double bar, we're going to now write the names of the spaces. So you would notice that there is a sequence of line, then space, then a line above that, and then space, and a line and space. So in total, there are 5 lines, and between the 5 lines, there are 4 spaces. Let's write the names of the notes of the spaces. Again, we're going from the bottom to the top. The first space, the name of this note is A. second space. What is the name of that note? Well, the name of this note is C. The third space, the name of this note is E. The fourth space, the name of this note is G. Let's write them. So we've already written the A. Now let's write the name of the note in the second space. You remember what we said that was? C. And the third space is E. And the fourth space is G. Now again, they taught us an acronym to help to remember these. And so the acronym is All Cows Eat. You can tell me what do cows eat? Grass. You know, I was teaching this one time and one student told me all cows eat milk. I guess they meant all cows produce milk, but all cows eat grass. Okay, so just to signal the end of this idea, I'm also going to add a double bar line. So we have completed naming the notes, the lines of the bass clef, as well as the spaces. So we would have accomplished our first mission. So I'm just going to remove those extra bars. Now, just to recap, the names of the lines of the bass clef are G, B, D, F, A, which stands for Good Boys Deserve Food Always. And the names of the spaces of the bass clef are A, C, E, G, which stands for All Cows Eat Grass. All right. Now let's go to the treble clef. Now, as I said before, usually notes on the bass clef will be played by the left hand. Notes on the treble clef will usually be played by the right hand. Now, let's name the lines of the treble clef. The first line is E. Okay. The next line is, who can tell me what's the next line? No, it's not N. It's not N at all. The next line is G. Yep. But I'm gonna change that to a whole note. Okay. All right. Who can guess what the next line is? Or do you actually know it? B. And the next line is D. And the fifth line of the treble clef is F. So, once again, the order of the lines from bottom to top are E, G, B, D, and F. And yes, there is an acronym that was used to help us to remember this, and this was Every Good Boy Deserves. Now, this was a toss between food and favor, and some even said football. To keep it consistent, we'll stick with food. Okay. Since we had used food for the bass clef, we'll also use food for the treble clef. Do you notice there's a difference between the notes on the treble clef as opposed to the notes on the bass clef? The notes on the treble clef, we start with E and we end with F. But the notes on the bass clef, we start with G and we end with A. So for the treble clef, it's Every Good Boy Deserves Food. And for the bass clef, it's Good Boys Deserve Food Always. Now, I think the easiest one to remember of all is the lines of the treble clef. And it spells a part of your body. The first place that someone sees usually when they see you. Your face. Can you spell face? F A, C, E. Good job. And that's it. So the first space is F, second space is A, third space is C, and the fourth space, I beg your pardon, fourth space is C, is E. I'm sorry. So F, A, C, and E. So we usually did not have to try to make up an acronym for this because it spells face, F-A-C-E. So that was sufficient. Just add all the letters together and you get face, and that tells you the order of the names of the spaces of the treble clef. So once again, let's recap. The lines of the treble clef are E, G, B, D, F. The spaces of the treble clef are F, A, C, E. I don't know why I keep mixing up spaces and lines. I've been doing too much talking all day. Now, the lines, let's recap the lines of the bass clef, which is usually played by the left hand. G, B, D, F, A. And the spaces of the bass clef, did I get that right this time? The spaces of the bass clef are A, C, E, G, which stands for all cows eat grass, just to help you to remember that. All right, so I need you to study that in preparation for our next session. Of course, those of you who are doing private lessons with me, you would have already, most of you, already gotten both clefs. There are some persons who may have only been introduced to the treble clef because your particular instrument only requires you knowing the treble clef, but eventually you will get exposed to the bass clef as well, just so that you have enough knowledge. I would also encourage drummers as well, even though for the drums you don't need to know the treble clef and bass clef, because musical notation for the drum is a little bit different in terms of what each line and each space represents. However, it's still good for all musicians, regardless of whatever instrument you are playing. It's always good for you to have knowledge of the keyboard slash the piano. It's like a master instrument that sets the tone for all other instruments, especially when we're playing together. All right, so it's good to have some working knowledge of music theory, of information that has to do with the piano, the keyboard, and then you can relate this information to your various instruments, be it voice, be it a wind instrument such as the trumpet, trombone, a woodwind like saxophone, be it that you're a guitar player, or be it that you're a drummer. It really doesn't matter. There's certain basic fundamentals of music that I believe all musicians need to know so that we are able to talk musical language, and it also helps the process of learning songs to be much faster. All right, so these are two simple lessons, lesson number 1 and lesson number 2. Have yourself a very good evening and see you next time. All right.